What's going on, everyone? Back with another episode of Stuff and Things. I hope you are all having a great Sunday, and today I decided we're going to switch things up just a little bit. We're going to be talking about a training event that I had the privilege to attend about a month ago, and this was put on by Surefire. Now, this isn't just any old training event. There were a lot of unique things about this, and because of that, it's allowing me to make a video. So the event was known as the Battle of the Bills, and that name will make sense to you in a little bit here. One of the things that was unique about it is that it was invite only, and Surefire was putting this on for people in media within the gun industry. So there were some other YouTubers, there were some like news type of outlets, and then there were also people from magazines there. Now, typically when you get a group of media like that, a lot of us are used to being behind the camera and in front of the cameras that we are actually running. So what also made this event really cool was that Surefire had their own media team there to get coverage for everyone. They had dedicated videographers and photographers. That way us as media could focus on the training and actually get a lot out of it, while other people were there to capture the content for us. One of the reasons why you guys do not see a lot of training content here on the channel is for that reason. When I go to a training event, I'm either there filming it and trying to capture it as best as possible while getting in a little bit of training, or I attend something like this and I spend the whole time training and I really don't pick up my camera throughout the entire day. So now that this event has happened, I have a whole bunch of photos and videos here in front of me on my computer, and we're gonna kind of run through them and I'll explain how my experience was at the Surefire event known as the Battle of the Bills. So the setting for this event took place at a facility known as Oak Grove Technologies just outside of Raleigh, North Carolina. This place had an on-site bunkhouse capable of holding 16 people. It was actually very accommodating for the size that we had there. They had a bunch of showers and bathrooms, a full-blown gym with even a boxing ring inside of there, and they also had the typical living spaces with a bar and a fire pit just outside. As you drive back through the facility, you will be able to see a bunch of different ranges where a lot of these trainings were taking place. They had one smaller flat range where we were doing some pistol work. They also had a larger flat range where we ended up doing a lot of the rifle stuff. They had a shoot house, which you will see a lot of throughout this video, and then they also had some rappel towers and just a lot of other things that we ended up not even utilizing in the 3 days that we were there. Now, the whole purpose of this event was for Surefire to basically give back to the media side of things. They were putting this together to offer comprehensive instruction on tactics, techniques, procedures, and a lot of different things in the training world with two awesome instructors, Bill Rapier and Bill Blowers. For our time spent there, we were split into two different groups, and then we would kind of rotate around. That way we got the most out of our time spent. And then the entire thing culminated in two massive final scenarios where we're using some simunition, and needless to say, things got pretty intense on that final day. Now, for a little bit about the instructors, for the first part of the first day, I ended up being with Bill Blowers. Bill was a police officer in Washington State for over 25 years, and he retired in February of 2018 as a sergeant. He also served in the United States Army from 1986 to 1992. He was assigned to SWAT in 1995 and stayed on SWAT for the remainder of his career. He served as a ballistic shield carrier, a breacher, entry team member, and a team coordinator, ending as a team leader. For his time spent as a team leader, Bill successfully planned or participated in approximately 1,500 pre-planned and in-progress SWAT callouts. He has over 5,000 training hours, and he has personally trained a bunch of different SWAT teams all across the country. And now, if you haven't picked up on it yet, the reason why this is called Battle of the Bills is because it was Bill Blowers against Bill Rapier. Now, for Bill Rapier, he spent 20 years in the U.S. Navy SEAL teams, with the last 14 as a member of the Naval Special Warfare Development Group, or as most people call it, DevGru. His assignments included assaulter, breacher, sniper, team leader, troop chief, and military working dog department senior enlisted advisor. Bill is a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which you will see a little bit of here throughout the video, and he is also trained in Western and Thai boxing as well. He is now the owner and operator of American Tactical Shooting Instruction, as well as AMTAC Blades. So chances are, if you wanted to train personally with either of these guys, they are pretty easy to find, and you should be able to find them coming to a place near you sometime in the future. Now we're gonna jump right into this footage here, starting with day one when I was on the flat range with Bill Blowers. This day started with us getting familiarized with the rifles that we were given for the event. We were running some BCM AR pistols with an 11.5-inch barrel, which is pretty much the superior race when it comes to barrel lengths. These were the MCMR versions coming with the M-LOK handguard, and they were pretty much decked out with everything that you possibly needed. On the end, we were running some Surefire SOCOM suppressors. My specific setup had a scout light on the side, and then we switched to some thumb pressure switches towards the end of the event. It also had an Aimpoint T2 with a really high unity mount, and I'll explain a little bit about that right now. The reason these guns were set up like this is because towards the end of the event, when we switched out for some sim rounds, we're running into this shoot house with iPro on and then these big clunky masks over top of us, so it is really hard to see if you've never put one on before. And because you got this big thing on your face, it's kind of hard to get down and actually see through your optic. So the first couple hours of the day were spent just kind of getting familiar with the rifle. It came pretty easy for me. Some of the things that we were working on were first getting them zeroed out to about 50 yards, and then we were working on the holdover. When the optic is sitting so high over the bore, you have to compensate for that holdover, so we kind of worked all that stuff out. And then we moved on a little further to shooting on the move, and then as well as practicing some reloads. We then moved over to the other range with Bill Rapier, and here we started working on some pistol fundamentals just to kind of get familiar with shooting with all of the people who were there with us. Some of the things that we were working on were one-handed draws from concealment, so actually clearing your cover garment and drawing your pistol all with one hand. And then we worked a little bit with shooting on the move and actually fighting with a pistol. The whole reason we are training and even carrying pistols in the first place is because you obviously want the advantage in any type of confrontation that you run into. So obviously you are going to want to learn how to fight with what you carry. So I don't have a whole lot of footage from the rest of that day, so we're gonna jump right into day 2 where things got a little more interesting. Now day 2 began back with Bill Blowers out on the flat range there, and we began working some CQB type of stuff. We were getting some great information from him on close quarter battle with an emphasis on response to active shooter scenarios. The final 2 scenarios, which you will see here today, were active shooter responses. So his course was basically designed to teach the basic principles of CQB and how to implement them on a practical application. His topics included some team hallway drills, doorways, corner fed rooms, center fed rooms, tactical movement, scouting, and addressing the problems associated with close quarter battle. It was really cool hearing his first-hand experience with everything that he has done in his career, and there were a ton of good takeaways from the time spent with him. We then moved into the shoot house where we practiced this stuff in a more real-life situation. We weren't actually going live here, but we did put the sim bolts in, and then we ran through a bunch of different scenarios where we were clearing rooms and we were just going over the best practices. As we would enter rooms, we would call out things that we would see. We were working on a lot of communication, and if you've never experienced something like this but you have interest in it, I would highly recommend finding somewhere where you can do stuff like this. Once we got into the live fire stuff with sim rounds, it became really intense, a lot more intense than I was expecting. So from there, we got a little bit of a break from the heat. It was super hot this entire weekend, and we got to go inside to utilize the gym at Oak Grove Technologies. This is where Bill Rapier was teaching some more pistol combatives and how to integrate an empty hand with a blade into self-protection. I stepped up to the plate and was the test subject for a lot of these things, and when he is coming at you full force with a blade and a firearm, it is very clear that he is definitely not one of those dudes that you want to run into an altercation on that type of level with. He was getting into a lot of the mindset on how to fluidly transition from one tool to the next based on what was situationally appropriate. And Surefire let us know that going into this was going to be physically demanding, and because of that, we had a little bit of bloodshed. When we got out the pads, I accidentally went a little bit too hard and I ended up smacking my friend Ben from the Wiseman Company in the face. So Ben, if you're watching this, I apologize for that. But then later on, karma hit me because as I was grappling, I got a shoulder straight to the nose, and I swear, it could have been broken, I'm really not sure, but it hurt for probably about 3 weeks after that.
Dude, you're right. What happened, guys? What happened?
I legit felt like I saw it coming too. I grabbed your arm and just pulled straight through and slammed it right in the nose. Can you get a slow-mo of that?
He might have gotten it, I don't know. Was it your shoulder that hit him in the nose?
Yeah, it just came straight like this. And like I heard it crunch. Like, oh, that hurt. My eyes started watering. My nose was already messed up enough because I had broken it in the past, but maybe it straightened it out a little bit. I don't know. So for the rest of our time spent in the gym, we were working on a lot of different strikes and blade transitions. We were actually going over a lot of the anatomy of where you actually want to land a lot of these strikes and how to rock the blade. As I mentioned, Bill did start Amtac blades and he had a lot of different blades there, which I was kind of nerding out about. You guys know that I'm into knives, so he had a widespread table of knives which we went over, and he kind of walked through each one and how they can be utilized in a self-defense situation. So now we're gonna jump right into day 3, where we did nothing but force on force the entire day. I don't have much footage of what we initially started with when we were out there with Bill Rapier, but basically what we did is we took our sim guns, holstered them up however you actually carry your firearm, and then we lined up about 15 to 20 yards apart from our partner, and as we got the call out, we would draw and have to place one shot as quickly as possible. If anyone is familiar with the Around the World drill, this is where you actually position your body differently for every one of these scenarios. So we're using that one-handed draw that I talked about earlier. We're going face on from the side, one-handed, two-handed. We're facing completely away from each other and actually spinning around. We're doing it from the right side. And then of course we are incorporating a lot of movement into this, so getting off the X while moving, drawing, and placing good shots down. This led us into our first scenario, which caught a lot of us off guard. So what we did was we walked out onto the range completely by ourselves and we were told to close our eyes. Bill gave us some instructions and some situation awareness to kind of put in our minds where we would be, whether we were like standing in line at a coffee shop or whatever the situation may call for. So he told us to completely close our eyes, and then when he said go, the situation will start. And this is what we were confronted with. So that may look pretty intense on camera, but when you are standing there experiencing it real time, it was pretty nuts. I really had no idea what to expect, and as I opened my eyes, there is a guy in front of me, full charge, with a machete in his hand. Luckily, I was able to use that training to immediately get off the X, draw as I'm running, and put some shots down. We ran this situation a few different times. Sometimes you would open your eyes and there would be a wall right here, so you would have to go the opposite way. So that was a really cool introduction to what was to come in the future. Then moving on to Bill Blowers, we went back to the shoot house, and this is where we started getting into more of the real life scenarios where we were kicking in doors and clearing rooms and things like that. Again, I don't have a whole lot of footage from this portion of the training, but after we would go through our scenarios, whether it would be a hostage situation or whatever it may be, we had time to kind of regroup and go over what we did well, what we could improve on, some things that went completely wrong, and then we got some really good feedback from Bill on where we can actually make these improvements and how to take them with us as we go forward into the final scenario. Now we're moving into the final scenarios. For my team member, I did of course pick Ben because PA, holding it down. This is where the real intensity kicked in. There were a lot of factors that went into how we were performing throughout this, and I'll throw in a bunch of clips here as I sort of explain how the scenario went. So this started again with our eyes closed, this time sitting in a vehicle. We had our sidearms on us wherever we actually carry, and then we had our rifles and plate carriers in the back of the truck. The scenario was us pulling up to the gate at a house in Mexico where they had one of our daughters held hostage. I'll let your minds run wild as to why that would be a scenario, but basically we were going in there to save her as a hostage rescue mission. So we started with our eyes closed, scenario started, we open our eyes, and I look to the left and there is the red man standing there, and he started to have a conversation with Ben. I might have got a little bit antsy with this one, but I did see that he had a machete on him, so I of course got out of the vehicle, drew my weapon. I ended up forcing him down on the ground and removing the machete from him. In this scenario, supposedly if you touch the actors, the people who were playing the bad guys there, they should be completely disarmed and then no longer allowed to attack you after that. And then we had another guy come around the gate. We had some more confrontation with him. I did notice that he had a gun in the back of his waistband, so I called it out, and as he went to grab for it, Ben already had his gun right up against him and we put him down. I then went over and took my Amtac blade and just kind of stuck it in Redman's neck because, I don't know, I just wanted to make sure that he wasn't going to pick up a gun and come after us again. So we all kind of got a good laugh out of that. So after we got our plate carriers on and got our rifles out, we went over to the shoot house and we were encountered with our first door. Now immediately as we go into this room to clear it, we had gunfire from an opposed door across the room, and my gun went down almost immediately. As you can see here, I am trying to clear the malfunction, but because of my eye pro and this big mask and the plate carrier, I really can't see down beneath it. I eventually fought through it and got the gun working again, so we stacked up against the door and then proceeded into the room. This one was cleared out after we put one guy down, and then we proceeded throughout the house. In the next room, we encountered some more hostages where we instructed them to get on the ground, and then we eventually cleared out the rest of the room. We proceeded then into a small hallway and then again into another room where we had to pie the corner a little bit. Now this shoot house was massive and there were actually some modular walls, so every time we went into this, we really didn't know what we were being presented with, and it was pretty much like real life. You never really know what you're walking into. So finally we got into one more shootout as we entered another room. We found the hostage and then slowly escorted her out of there. There is no audio with this clip, but I really wish there was because he was doing a killer job of being the damsel in distress. The scenario did not end until we got back out to the truck, so again we had to open the door to the outside where it's blinding light and hot again. We did hear some movement out to the right, so we of course came out, got into another shootout. My gun went down again, which you can see here, so I threw it to the side, switched to my pistol, and it's kind of hard to see what I'm taking cover behind, but there were a set of stairs and sort of like a Kubota type of thing there. We ended those threats, grabbed the hostage, and made our way back to the truck, and that was the end of the first scenario. Now there were a lot of things that could have been improved on that run, but again, this is our first time working together, both Ben and I. And like I mentioned, there are a lot of different factors going into this to judge our performance. This was Ben and I's first time actually working together in a situation like this, and the more you practice, the better you will get, and that is why a lot of team members, both Navy SEAL and SWAT teams, a lot of these guys work together in teams non-stop. Even if you put two very experienced people like the two Bills together, it's gonna take them a little bit to get used to how things run when you're working with someone new. Speaking of that, I would love to see those guys work together for a little while and actually run a scenario like this because I know they would crush it. They are very talented and very respected in both of their fields. So anyway, moving on to the next final scenario. This was an active shooter situation, first starting in a coffee shop. So this scenario started with Ben standing in line for coffee. I was seated at a bench, and on go, we opened our eyes and had to react to the situation. Now, I wasn't exactly sure what was going on in this situation. I didn't know if it was gonna be like another hostage type of scenario, so I stood up, was hesitant to draw because I didn't know if they were just yelling to kind of cause a commotion or if they were actually attacking us. Then once I saw a machete come out and another dude with a pistol, then I decided to draw. At that point, Ben was already standing and had his firearm out, put the two guys down, and then we were ready to move on to what was next. We ran from the makeshift coffee shop over to our vehicles again. We decided to put on our plate carriers. Well, at least I did. Ben decided that time was of the essence, so he just ran off with his rifle. Sometimes situations dictate things like that. So then we ran over to the shoot house, which was now a school where we had a child of ours in there in a classroom. We realized that there were hostiles taking over the school and we had to go in there to get a child back to safety. So again, we did some typical clearing. As soon as we entered the room, it was not the prettiest thing ever because stress levels were very high. We were engaged in a shootout almost immediately to our right through an open door. We did put that person down and then we stacked up to go into the next room. Here you can see some of the A1 acting coming into play as some hostages were running out of the room. We had some more coming out through the next door. We instructed them to get out of the building, and it was a little bit difficult to tell because all these dudes are grown adults and they're kind of dressed the same. Now, as we got some of the hostages out of that next room, this is kind of hard to tell on video, but it was an extremely dark environment. I had glasses on and a mask, like I keep saying. You got sweat pouring in your eyes, and it was really hard to see. So we were using those scout lights to our advantage to peek peek into the next room. As soon as I shine my light, there is some more contact. In this particular scenario, I definitely got hit in the plate carrier and I believe one in the leg, but my return fire was enough to put him down and we continued on throughout the building. I believe Ben's gun went down here because he went for a reload, and just like mine did the previous one, with all the sand and everything that we were laying in throughout the weekend, it was kind of hard to keep these things running, especially with those sim rounds. So we continued through the school, clearing out some more rooms. Ben eventually switched over to his pistol because his rifle was just not working entirely. And because of that, I started leading more into most of the rooms. We had some more contact throughout the way. And here you can start to get an idea for how dark these rooms actually are if you do not have a quality flashlight. So eventually we cleared everything that we needed to do. We got rid of all of the hostiles and we made our way back outside to where the scenario finally ended. Now, training events like this are very hard to capture, but I believe that Surefire's film crew did a killer job. We got a ton of good content from this. And you guys don't really see training videos like this here on my channel because I would much rather encourage people to go out and do it for themselves. When you put training stuff like this out on the internet, people are gonna come out and try to critique you on everything that you're doing. So instead of just sounding off in the comments on what you thought of something like this, I would recommend going out and doing it yourself. There were so many great takeaways from this event with both Bill Blowers and Bill Rapier. They were both very knowledgeable in everything that they do. Everything was done with purpose, and I definitely felt that I had some great takeaways from the event. Surefire did a killer job with finding the perfect place at Oak Grove Technologies. The food was great. We got an awesome swag pack with a bunch of different products from all of the sponsors of the event. I will leave links to some of those in the description down below if you are interested in checking those out. And overall, Battle of the Bills, in my opinion, was a huge success, and hopefully this will continue on in the future because it's really awesome as someone in media to be appreciated by a company like Surefire. It's awesome that they put this on, and I'm sure everyone felt the same way. Now, if you guys have any questions on things that you saw here, let me know in the comments down below. I will try to leave relevant links if you want to check out any of these products. To both of the instructors and everyone at Surefire who had a hand at putting this together, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate all that was done, and I'm looking forward to the possibility of maybe attending next year if this thing continues on. So that's all that I got for today. If you guys like this content, slap a like on it, and if you are new to the channel, consider clicking subscribe. I make new videos every week. There's a lot more coming soon. So as always, thank you for watching, and I will talk to you in the next one.